Welcome to the co-recursive bonus episode. I am Adam Gordon Bell, and this is bonus episode 17. Today, I'd like to talk to you about accomplishing something hard, and one strategy for doing that I found like super helpful, really helpful. I have a upcoming episode. I did the interview. I have to work on the editing now about being the absolute best at something in the world, like the path of getting there. And in this case, it's writing like a fast version of a popular algorithm. And that's a hard thing to do, right? To become the best in the world at something. There's lots of strategies that can work, but for me, the things that work when you have a hard goal, which is what I want to talk about today, how you accomplish a hard goal, like a long-term hard goal over time, are having a scoreboard and having a minimum habit. That's what I want to tell you about here. Over the course of, I don't know, the years from maybe like 38 to 42, I guess without really paying attention, I gained a bunch of weight. And I've always been a pretty skinny person. And it was never really something I had to worry about. If I felt like I got out of shape, I could pretty quickly get myself back in shape. But somehow I crossed some sort of elbow, some sort of Rubicon, and I became, a middle-aged 40-year-old man with a beer gut, right? And I wasn't happy about it, and I needed to do something, and I tried things, and they didn't all work, right? I tried keto and running and so on, and they didn't work. And so I'd like to talk about accomplishing a hard goal in the context of that, right? The thing that I found worked, the first one was finding a way to set a scoreboard, having a scoreboard that you can compare yourself to. So for losing weight, that might sound pretty simple, right? You can just weigh yourself, but I found it's not because, your weight can go up like 5 pounds day to day sometimes. And when I'm trying to lose like half a pound a week, how can you actually measure that within that noise? But that's when I found trend weight. So I bought one of these automatic scales that weighs you every day, and this all has to do with building software, I swear. But I got the Wi-Fi scale, and I hooked it up to this thing called Trend Weight, which is based on The Hacker's Diet, which is this book that John Walker, who created AutoCAD, created, and just about his path towards weight loss. And basically what it does is it subtracts the noise from your weight. So you can weigh yourself every day, and it takes kind of a moving average. And you watch this moving average instead of watching, what the scale actually says. And it tells you if you're gaining weight this week or if you're losing weight, and it subtracts out all that noise of just like how hydrated you are and etc. And with that, I had a true scoreboard, right? I had a way that I could look and see whether what I was doing was working. Because I feel like the thing that people don't talk about when it comes to weight loss or goals in general is that if you don't know where your true north is, if you don't know if you're making progress, then it's impossible. It doesn't matter what your strategy is if you don't know day to day if it's working, right? So this is a scoreboard. I think it's important whenever you want to accomplish something that you have a scoreboard, right? If you are trying to write the world's fastest algorithm, then there's a very clear scoreboard, right? You can look at other versions of it and you can compare it. You can run your code and see how you're doing. Some things are harder to measure, right? If you want to get good at drawing, it's harder to find a scoreboard, but it is possible. You could pick an artist you like and a drawing you like or several drawings and measure yourself against that, right? Let me try to recreate this and let me see where I'm good. Let me see where I'm bad and where I need to improve upon. That can be my scorecard. I could compare myself against this other piece of art. There's also fitness benchmarks, right? If you want to get in shape, you could try setting a goal of being able to run a 10K in under 50 minutes or under an hour or under 45 minutes. You can have these goals, which is your 10K speed, and you can try to get better and better at it. You can measure yourself. Or, if you're lifting weights, it could be like, how much can I deadlift? There's very clear metrics. And this is important. I think that having this scorecard can really bring everything else in line. They can make you see whether you are or are not making progress towards a hard goal, right? It works for learning. It works for accomplishing things. I found it to just be powerful, right? If you want to learn a language, maybe there are language proficiency tests that you can set yourself up against. I'm talking here about like learning a spoken language, not a programming language. But yeah, there are tests, right? And they can be used to measure yourself against. The downside of having a score card that you measure yourself at and that you're motivated to overcome is that you can game them, right? You can find ways to get better at the score that doesn't actually move you towards your own metric, right? And so this happened for me as well when I started weighing myself with the scale, I would weigh myself, just casually get on the scale and weigh myself. Over time I learned like, oh, if I weigh myself in my underwear, I get a little bit lower number. If I weigh myself first thing in the morning before I have my morning coffee, it's a little bit lower, right? And so very quickly I was doing that every day, just weighing myself first thing in the morning. And, that made the number seem like it was going down a little bit. It didn't actually help me towards my goal, but that's fine, right? That as long as it is mainly pointing towards the direction I'm going to, I think it can be very powerful, right? If you wanted to get good at leak code problems, and so you decided to look at the leak code rankings and measure yourself against them. You thought this would make you better at writing algorithms. You know, you could get better by just working really fast or copying, pasting examples, and they might not truly move you towards having a better understanding of algorithms. But over time, it will, right? The goal you're working towards is fairly aligned towards understanding, imperative algorithms. And that's good enough, right? But anyways, this is what I call a scoreboard. If you have a hard goal you want to accomplish over a long period, I think it's important that you find this scorecard to measure yourself against. Choose it carefully, right? The specific strategies and tactics, I think, can matter less than having this benchmark that you set yourself against and that you're really motivated to just run at. Like that this is what you want to overcome. And if you did it, it would be meaningful. So for me, once I had that scorecard, like the specific tactics, they changed, right? Like I tried to do a keto diet. That was super hard. I tried to do intermittent fasting, which mainly was good. Like that worked for me for quite some time. And I did lose weight on that, but then eventually that stopped working. And well, the problem was I was just like ravenously hungry all the time. And I think sometimes when my wife came home from work and I hadn't eaten all day, like I was kind of a dick to her. And so that wasn't great. And then have to change the strategy a little bit again. And I started just eating a lot of apples whenever I got hungry because they don't have a lot of calories, but it's like pseudo intermittent fasting. But the point is that the tactics didn't need to be fixed. I didn't have to come up with them ahead of time. Once I had that scorecard to point myself towards, the other things I could figure out as I went, right? Do I need to do more exercising? Do I need to get rid of sweeteners? Like, as long as I have a way to measure things, I can tell if I'm getting better. I can change as I go. I had the episode with Daniel Lemire, and I have this upcoming episode with somebody who worked a lot in performance. And what they accomplish is super hard and it's impressive. I do think there is a slight advantage in that when you're working on performance stuff, it's very easy to have a scorecard. It's very easy to measure yourself. And that can keep you pointed in a certain direction and gives you an advantage. I think certain other tasks are much harder. If you want to build the most ergonomic programming language, like it's not clear to me what scorecard you could fight against to make that happen. Performance is very easy to score. So I think you should aim to have a scorecard if you want to accomplish something hard. I keep saying scorecard. I think what I mean to say is scoreboard, a place to see that you're ranking and whether you're moving and performing. And with weight, like there's nobody else on the scoreboard, right? It was just me. I could just tell where I was when I was getting better. So that's the first key. The second key is what I'm calling a minimum habit. I think I got this term from Scott Young, who had this great book, Alter Learning, which I really liked and I would recommend if you want to take on a tough project. That's entirely what the book is about. But there's a lot of talk about habits, right? And habits, I don't know, it seems like an idea that's free, right? Like if I have the habit to exercise every day, I'll just exercise every day without thinking about it. And I think that's how people think about habits. Like once you establish it, it's free. That's probably true to a certain extent. But there's different types of habits, right? People talk about a habit trigger. So the idea that when something happens, I'll do something else, right? Before I go to bed, I'll brush my teeth. And then maybe after I brush my teeth, I floss. If you want to add a new habit like flossing, it's important to add it as a trigger to some other habit, and that makes accomplishing it easy. There's also habit stacking, where it's like, oh, I like doing X, right? What's an example? I like having a beer, so every time I have a beer, I'm going to ride on the exercise bike. This is not a good example, but the idea is attaching something that you like to something you'd like to do, and hopefully that motivates it to happen. The thing that I found useful was a minimum habit. So a minimum habit strategy, the idea is just a commitment that you will do something no matter what to a certain minimum level, right? So that could be saying, like Stephen King, I think his thing was that like every day he would write 1,000 words. Sometimes he would write much more than that, but he'd always write 1,000 words every day. That was his habit. And all the books he's written over time are just him keeping this going, right? This daily minimum target. It's the idea that you focus on consistency rather than intensity. You don't say, like, I'm going to write a book in November. You say, I'm just going to write every day. I have a minimum amount. Some days it could be accomplished in 2 hours. but that's fine. As long as I keep at it over time, it's going to add up. And I think that that's super powerful, right? You need to set something that can be done, on that day when you really don't want to do it, you can still get it done. It doesn't have to be a daily habit. A minimum habit just means there's some specific lower end that you say, I'm always going to do that. Right. So this podcast is a minimum habit for me. I do one episode a month and I do one bonus episode. Um, some months that's a struggle. Some months it's a struggle to get that one episode out. Some months I have extra time and I can work on improving, my process around how I create things. I can work on improving my editing process or cleaning up the audio or try to improve the website or put more time into the editing process. But some months it's hard to get that one out, but that's my minimum. And I just keep doing that. And that means that I can keep going, right? I never miss it. And that is powerful, right? If you were this leak code example where you're trying to get better at writing these like imperative algorithms, you might say like, listen, my Saturday afternoon, I'm going to do a leak code problem. I know they have weekly contests. Maybe I'm just going to participate in those every week. Or maybe I'm just going to take the one from last week and try to solve it every Tuesday morning, spend a couple hours on it and then review other people's solutions. And it's not hard. It's just once a week, spending an hour or two on it, but I'm going to commit to that, right? That's the key. That minimum that just keeps on building over time, that you're accumulating skills, but it's something that's not going to stop because over a long enough time period, if you're accumulating, so much can get done. For language learning, maybe it's just like daily flashcards. I don't know a lot about language learning, but it's some minimum level that you can build on over time. For performance work, like let's say you're trying to build the world's fastest key value store, maybe you just set aside some time, like 2 nights a week. I just plug away at working on this. And then every once in a while, I run my benchmark and I test it against Redis and I see how I'm doing, right? It's just a minimum goal that I can accomplish even the months when I don't really want to push on it. For weight loss, for me, the minimum habit was just that weighing myself every day because it just kept me honest, right? I didn't always, and I continue to struggle with eating within my calorie limit, but I just keep weighing myself because I think that that is my minimum habit. And I know that things are being tracked regardless. It doesn't actually cause me to lose weight, but it at least causes me to be conscious of what's going on because you gain the weight when you're not paying attention. That's what I found. And at times, this was all super hard, right? Like it sounds easy and I'm not 100% still where I want to be, but I'm working on it, right? And now I'm going to shift my goal to building some more muscle, and I need a new scorecard for that. What's my goal for getting myself back in shape? Because as I'm getting older, I'm struggling with how to do that. So there are faster ways to accomplish something hard if you can keep at it, right? Like I lost less than half a pound a week, and so it took me more than a year to lose 20 pounds of weight. But I kept going, right? That's why this works. That's why with a hard goal that's going to take a long time, at least for me, I think the hardest thing is to just keep going, right? So if you have a scorecard, if you know whether you're making progress, then you have some minimum goal that makes the absolute minimum towards that, and you can just keep going, then that is powerful, right? A minimum habit keeps you from stopping, and the scorecard makes sure that you're actually moving towards that. It needs to be relatively easy, but something that you can do and accumulate. So that's my advice. For accomplishing a hard goal, you need to have those two things. And this was the bonus episode. Thank you so much for your support. Until next time, take care.